let's get into listener mail. As tradition dictates, boys, we end every episode of Sacred Symbols with 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from the audience on Patreon. Remember to support us over there if you can. Patreon.com/laststandmedia. We really appreciate it, whether you can give us $1, $2, $5, etc. a month. Doing so gets you all sorts of perks, like submitting these inquiries. Michael Miller wrote in and said, greetings, CNC, and maybe some D. What would you want a PlayStation Game Pass to look like? Should Sony just work on greatly improving PS Now since they already have a solid foundation? Or should they make something entirely from scratch? My dream is the former, but with PS1 and PS3 download support. Thanks, and keep on being awesome. Chris, let's get into the nitty gritty here.
Yeah.
Sony does a Game Pass rival. I think we can all agree PS Now, as it's currently constituted, is not really that rival.
No.
Just structurally speaking, I don't think it's really a rival, but what would you want to see? How would you want Sony to approach this ordeal, if you would want them to at all?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, like if you're asking me like what would I want a PlayStation Game Pass to look like, my answer would be exactly like it looks over on Xbox's side. Like Game Pass is, for people who don't, I know this is obviously a PlayStation show, and I know a lot of people probably don't have a lot of experience with it, but it is just awesome. Like it's so good. And I wouldn't change anything about it. I would just bring that over here. Only PlayStation has such a unique advantage because it has such a much longer history with a much more historically important catalog of games, I think. I think the fact that you have all these PS1 titles that are just unusable on their newest machine, a bunch of PS2 titles that are unusable, that are like, some of them are there natively through the PS4 ports that they did. But PS3 as a generation is entirely gone. You can only stream it to PS Now. I think the ideal way to go is maybe bring PS Now into a bit of a renaissance where it's like, hey, it's still for streaming games, but guess what? Here's a bunch of first-party exclusives from the PS1 generation, from the PS3 generation, from the PS2 generation that are included for free for you. That can be natively downloaded, that don't need to be streamed. I think this is the same problem that Stadia had. It was like, here's a platform exclusively for streaming. It's like, it doesn't work because people's internet just isn't reliable enough to handle that kind of thing. Streaming should always be like seasoning, or something that's like additive to a platform, in the same way that, xCloud is kind of just this kind of added little benefit of Game Pass. It's like, yeah, you could stream it if you don't want to spend the time downloading it, or you could download it, which is where you would want to play the game seriously. And I really think that's really all that needs to change. I think they need to embrace the fact that they have a really amazing catalog back in the PS1 and the PS3. And if Xbox can reverse engineer their console to play backwards compatible games, I don't see why Sony can't. The only reason Sony can't is because they won't. And yeah, I don't know. Kids in their fucking basements are figuring out how to do this on their MacBooks. Surely they can do it.
I love the point you made, by the way, Chris, especially about downloading games as opposed to streaming them. I've always been thinking recently about, because you can't, as you said, for some reason you cannot download PS3 games. And people will remember when PlayStation Now came out, you couldn't download PS4 games either. Yeah. And they made that a thing where you can download the PS4 and PS2 games, but for some reason you just can't play the PS3 games. I feel like they need to. PlayStation Now is a good marketing term. I don't think they need to get rid of it. But I love what you said about seasoning. Like, de-emphasize the streaming, which should be optional on your computer or on your tablet or whatever, and just make it a library of games worth having. And I think that's a solid start in and of itself. Dustin, what do you think?
I think the Xbox is in a unique position with Game Pass, as we've talked about, just because they have so much money that they can burn for a very long time and not be profitable for a while, to the extent that that's something that I don't think Sony could do in the way that Xbox is doing it. Mm-hmm. In some ways, though, if you look at it, if you buy a PS5, or if you're able to, I should say, if you're able to buy a PS5 today and you have no background with PlayStation, you have 30 games right now available to you. Now, it's not quite Game Pass, but certainly there's something to be said for that. And the amount of games that they're just giving away is pretty substantial. But if we're talking about specifically a PlayStation Game Pass, I don't know. I think they're in a difficult situation because people want it to be like Xbox and be able to get all of Sony's first party included. And I just don't think there is any reality where Sony gives up their ace in the hole for this right now. You know, Sony first party, that is what sells their consoles. That is their cream of the crop. You know, their Game of the Year nominated games. We talked about how they dominated Game of the Year categories last year for DICE and the other different award things. So I don't know what that means. You know, they do have a strong legacy. Maybe that could be one of the big pillars of their service, is they're like, hey, we're bringing back every generation of PlayStation. But I just don't see that being the case either, since it's very clear Jim Ryan does not give a single fuck about those old games.
Yeah, he talked shit about Gran Turismo. Remember when he talked shit about Gran Turismo? He said, who wants to go back and play Gran Turismo 3 or whatever? Which is an interesting thing. I mean, he's right. I mean, who really wants to go back and play Gran Turismo 3? It came out in 2001 or something like that? It's like, I don't think you want to go back. I don't think it looks as good as you think it does. But
probably not. But like, dude, like, because I started playing KOTOR because it was on Game Pass. Like recently, I have no nostalgia for KOTOR at all.
Which is from 2003. Yeah, which
is from 2003. It's ancient by today's standards. It's not like, you know, but it's not far off from 2001. And like, I'm enjoying that game. Like, I'm finding this game that I would not have in a million years bothered to find, you know, had it not been for the fact that it was just readily available to me for free. And I was like, what the hell? And that experience in and of itself is really cool. And the fact that PlayStation has this huge legacy of amazing titles like this, like Legacy of Kain, I guess like the Crash and Spyro has been like remastered and all that, but still, like, even those original versions of those games have their own unique kind of charms and their own reason to play them again, I think. And it just seems like a huge missed opportunity. I wouldn't even say that they need to do the Xbox Game Pass route in the sense that they need to put out like, hey, here's our first party games for free. Just do what Nintendo does with their with the Switch and their virtual libraries. Like, hey, you know what? Every couple months, here's a couple of new PS1 games. Here's like 4 new PS1 games. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't, but it's value that is being added consistently. And you could be like, oh, I wonder what's going to be next. Oh, Legacy of Kain, oh shit. That's huge, you know, and if you mix and match generations, like here's PS1, PS2, PS3, that's a huge deal. And just not dipping your toes into that at all, I think is a mistake. But I understand, like, yeah, they can't go ahead and give away God of War Ragnarok for free, you know? No, they can't.
They can't afford it. And I mean, Dustin, you're absolutely right. And I've been trying to explain this to people where they're like, well, you know, Game Pass for Microsoft will be profitable eventually. And I'm like, I don't think you get it. Game Pass never needs to be profitable, ever. It doesn't matter. You know, like, they are working with so much money with Microsoft. And again, I'm a Microsoft shareholder, so I'm just throwing that out there. But they're working with so much money, as been famously noted, their last quarter net income profit, their profit was twice as much as they spent on Bethesda. This is a company that wipes its ass with money. And as I said to Maddie, I think on our episode of Sacred Symbols Plus, Microsoft doesn't give a fuck about Xbox. It's not like it's not really a relevant part of their thing. Like I was saying, as a shareholder, when you like read their documentation and listen to people and stuff, no one's talking about Xbox. You know, it's Azure and cloud storage and all that kind of stuff. And it's really other things. And Xbox is really the beneficiary of all of the money that's made elsewhere. And it's awesome. It's a great position to be in. I wonder, though, guys, if the best solution for Sony, because I keep saying that the differentiator for Sony is quality. I'm not saying Microsoft doesn't make high quality games. Nintendo obviously makes high quality games as well. But Sony is very well known for the last, let's say, 7 or 8 years for making a few high quality Game of the Year contending first party games that they sweep the BAFTAs, they sweep the DICE Awards, they sweep the Game Awards. They do really well. And I wonder, guys, if the solution is simply saying like, Game Pass, that's great. You know, you guys can go have your Netflix. What we want to do is we want to have, and it's to what Chris was kind of saying, a selection. We want to have a boutique selection of curated games. Maybe we do it every month. Maybe we do it every 2 months or whatever. The 20 PS Plus collection games. Maybe we always have a stay-at-home game. Maybe we always have this, that, and the other thing. And I like the idea of them saying, like, we're just going to keep the quality really high. We're not going to give you 800 or 1,000 games. It's not going to happen. What we're going to do is we're going to give you 50 very high quality games, and we'll replace those in a few months with 50 more, 20 more to replace the 20 we removed. I feel like maybe something like that speaks to the PlayStation consumer in some way, because there is some sort of expectation of high quality. And Maddie was the first to admit it when I said this to him. I'm like, the Xbox One generation was a total wash for Microsoft. They didn't release anything.
Yeah.
Of the I would say the 10 highest quality PlayStation 4 games. There's like nothing on that level, you know? So why not take advantage of it while you still can? Because as the years evolve, Chris, as we've been discussing, when Microsoft gets their ducks in a row, they're going to start having a salvo of games coming out, and I imagine they're going to start being pretty high quality, and we're going to see that with Halo later this year, and see what you know, if how the cookie crust crumbles, as it were. So
yeah,
what do you guys think about maybe taking a more? It's a risk, but saying because no streaming service really works like that. But it's almost like the Disney Plus kind of situation, where it's like Disney Plus is kind of the most maybe what I'm talking about, where it's like, we are Disney.
Yeah.
You know?
So
here are
here's
our shows. You know, here are our movies. You're not going to watch Mad Men on Disney Plus. You know, you're going to watch
Bad.
Aladdin on Disney Plus. And when you come to PlayStation now, you're not going to play. You're not going to play. I don't know, Bully. Maybe you will.
Yeah.
But you're going to play. We're going to bring back Starhawk and Legend of Dragoon. And so I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think that's not a bad idea. I just think they need to just be wiser about how they approach the systems that they already have and that they already spent a bunch of money on. Like, I feel like Gaikai and like PS Now is just like sitting there doing nothing. Like, they haven't done anything with PS Now in ages, it feels like. You can't even, like, I even tried. I was like, all right, fine. I guess I'll stream Resistance, because I can't. They're just not going to put these goddamn games out. And you can only stream Resistance 3. What? Like, why? Like, why just the end of Resistance? You can what barrier is there from letting you at least stream the first two Resistance games that isn't there for the third one?
Yeah, it doesn't.
It's really confusing, and it just makes me feel like their back end is just like a warehouse fire. Like, it seems so disorganized. It's like a paper tiger almost, where it's like, oh, how ornate. Look at how sleek the PS5 is. And then you go into it and it's like, why is this UI so weird? Why do I have to scroll over to the fucking off button? There's so many minor problems that could be solved in my mind so easily, you know, but I don't know.
I wonder, and Dustin, I'll kick this one over to you, I guess. And as we wrap up this question is it an option for Sony to do nothing? And I've been wondering this as well. Like, Sony's response is often to do nothing. And it's worked out pretty well for them. You know, Microsoft went on this. Remember, the Bethesda deal is a big deal, but Microsoft went on an even more substantial shopping spree a few years ago, and Sony didn't do anything. You know, we expected that they would have, when Obsidian and Ninja Theory and all these studios went, that they would have, you know, Playground and all these guys, they would have been a little nervous about it, but they only bought Insomniac, and they did that like a year and a half later, so clearly it was unrelated. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be making reactionary moves, but is it an option for Sony to just say, we're not doing anything? Because they are still in pole position. So I don't know how comfortable they are.
I think it's definitely possible that they don't really need to do anything at all. I think right now in particular, they may be thinking like, yeah, who cares how many studios you buy? Because at the end of the day, we have God of War Ragnarok. We have these I think we talked about this last week, Colin, these industry stopping games, like where everyone online comes together and plays this one game. It's the game that, like, the day it comes out, you look at your friends list and everyone is playing it at the same time. So I'm in one sense like, yeah, that's kind of maybe where their mindset is, but it's a risky place to be in, because as you said, the fruit of the Microsoft purchases are going to come eventually, and we may be looking at a new era where we do see multiple Microsoft first party studios putting out games that are Game of the Year contenders, or maybe not. We've seen how they managed their studios last generation. Now, part of that was under different leadership with Don Matrix. I guess he was kind of gone towards the beginning.
Yeah, so but to your point, he set that in motion. I mean, I think Phil Spencer. I think finally the last couple of years is when Phil Spencer is no longer responsible for Don Matrix. anymore. You
Right.
know? Now it's his boat. His ship.
So just to quickly finish my thought here is just that if they do nothing for too long, then they may find themselves in a much heavier competition. So they got to play their cards right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very interesting situation. The one thing that I wanted to say that I think is maybe lost on some people that I've been thinking about a lot recently was Sony and Microsoft are probably more privy to how each other is doing through publishers and through their partners. Remember how I used to kid around on this on Beyond and PS I Love You all the time. We always figured out how PS3 was selling and then later Xbox One by Electronic Arts, always saying there are 150 million next gen consoles. And then it's like, all right, just do the math. We just got the numbers for PS3. We just got the numbers for Xbox. Everyone's a little more stringent about that, but certainly their publishing partners must know who's doing what and how it's all reacting. And I imagine it's really hard to keep those things siloed off from each other. So you would imagine like Sony probably knows if it's working for Microsoft or not. And Microsoft probably knows what's working and not working for Sony and how each other's games are doing internally and who's downloading what and what's selling. So I'm also interested in that, which is unknowable for us, but certainly within the chemistry of what they're trying to deal with now.